You think you know the person sleeping next to you. You think the walls of your expensive house are protecting you. I did too. You are wrong. The international flight I missed was not a disaster. It was my salvation. Because sometimes the worst thing is not leaving home. It is coming back at exactly the wrong time. When a perfect marriage shatters, it does not just break hearts. It draws blood. My name is Eliza. The windshield wipers of my Tesla were fighting a losing battle against the Seattle deluge, the rhythmic slap, slap, slap barely audible over the roar of the downpour on the I-90 bridge. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. I was 38 years old, the CEO of Ethelred Analytics. And I was late. Not just late for a flight. I was on my way to a summit in Singapore, the kind of meeting where a 90-second delay could evaporate a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My company, my legacy, was balanced on this trip. My phone buzzed again. My assistant Ben, no doubt. I ignored it, accelerating into the express lane. The gray expanse of Lake Washington a churning, angry mess below me. SeaTac was 20 minutes out. Boarding would be starting. I mentally ran through my presentation, the data points, the projections. Then, a cold, sharp spike of adrenaline shot through my chest, entirely different from the pre-meeting jitters. It was pure, unadulterated horror. My passport. It was not in my briefcase. It was not in my purse. It was sitting in the top left drawer of my antique mahogany desk, tucked away in my home office. A raw, frustrated sound escaped my throat. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel. There was no choice. I cut the wheel hard, ignoring the blare of a horn behind me as I veered across 2 lanes toward the exit for Mercer Island. The frustration was so potent it tasted like acid. Every minute wasted was a disadvantage, a sign of weakness I could not afford. 10 minutes later, I was pulling back up the long, rain-slicked driveway to our home. It was less a house and more a statement, a 3-level marvel of modern glass and exposed steel cantilevered over the lake. It was worth millions, a fortress of solitude that on days like this felt more like a beautiful cage. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the entire structure feel like it was underwater. I punched the code for the garage. The heavy door groaned open, revealing the empty space next to my car. Marcus, my husband, was gone. As he should be. His calendar, which I managed as meticulously as my own, had him locked in back-to-back meetings downtown at his investment firm all day. 42 years old and the perfect supportive partner. He always handled everything at home when I had to travel. The house was silent as I stepped inside, the air still and cold. The only sound was the omnipresent drumming of the rain. I kicked off my soaked Louboutins on the mat, my stockinged feet padding silently on the polished concrete floor. The silence felt different today, heavier, unnatural. I headed for the main atrium, dominated by a floating staircase of brushed steel and frosted glass that spiraled up to the 2nd and 3rd floors. My office was on the 2nd. My hand was on the cold railing, my foot lifted for the first step. When I stopped, a voice. It was coming from the 3rd floor, from our master suite, specifically the office wing. It was Marcus. I froze, my entire body locking tight. He should not be here. My first thought was a canceled meeting, a simple change of plans he had forgotten to mention, but the sound of his voice extinguished that thought instantly. This was not his work voice, the confident, charming baritone he used with clients. This was not the warm, loving voice he used with me. This was a tone I had never heard. It was low, intimate, and laced with a teasing, venomous cruelty. It was the voice of a stranger. I stood perfectly still, one foot hovering, straining to hear. I could not make out the words at first, just that predatory purr. Then I heard a laugh, a sharp, genuine laugh, and the words that followed sliced through the sterile air of my home and into my heart. "She will be in the air for 14 hours, he said, the amusement still rich in his voice. "By the time she lands, The transfer will be complete. That private hospital will pull the plug on the old man by Friday. My blood did not just run cold. It turned to solid ice. My hand clamped over my mouth to stifle the gasp that tried to tear its way out of my chest. I could not breathe. I could not move. The old man. There was only one old man in my life. My father, Robert. The founder of Ethelred Analytics, the brilliant mind who was now lying in a private room at a long-term care facility, unresponsive, living in the twilight world of a vegetative state after a mysterious, devastating stroke 6 months ago. I remained at the foot of the stairs, a statue carved from ice and disbelief. The house, my fortress of glass and steel, suddenly felt like a tomb. The sound of the Seattle rain was a deafening, cold applause for the end of my world. His voice, the voice of my husband, echoed from above, and my mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, fled into the past, searching for the man I thought I knew. I saw him, Marcus, not the monster upstairs, but the man I met at a crowded charity gala 2 years ago. He was a fund manager, handsome in that effortless, old-money way, but it was his quiet humility that drew me in. In a room full of people trying to get close to the CEO of Ethelred Analytics, he was the only one who seemed completely unimpressed by my wealth. He talked about hiking Mount Si, about his terrible golf game, about a book on Stoic philosophy he was reading. He listened to me, truly listened, with an intensity that made me feel like the only person in the room. When my father, Robert, collapsed 6 months ago, that man, that Marcus, became my rock. The stroke was sudden, brutal, and mysterious. It left the founder of my company, my brilliant, indomitable father, a shell in a hospital bed. I was drowning in grief, simultaneously trying to steady a billion-dollar company that had just lost its visionary. Marcus handled everything. He was a pillar of calm strength in the sterile, beeping chaos of the ICU. He researched facilities, finding the absolute best long-term care in the state. He dealt with the endless stream of lawyers and hospital administrators. And then, he handled the most critical piece, the medical power of attorney. I remember sitting in the hospital cafeteria, the smell of stale coffee thick in the air, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. Marcus slid the documents across the table, his hand covering mine. "Eliza, my love," he'd said, his voice a balm of pure empathy. "You are carrying the weight of the company. You cannot bear this, too. Let me take this one awful burden from you. I will make sure he has everything. I promise." I had signed the papers without a second thought, flooded with a wave of gratitude so profound it made me weak. I had handed my husband, my rock, the legal authority to make every decision about my father's life and death. My mind flashed to our wedding day, an intimate ceremony last spring at our small estate in the Willamette Valley, surrounded by vineyards. The sky was that impossible Oregon blue. I remembered Marcus, his voice thick, his eyes streaming with tears as he read his vows. He promised to be my sanctuary, my partner in all things, my fiercest protector. He cried. He had actually cried. His support for my career was absolute. He managed all of our personal investments, our properties, our liquid assets, freeing me to focus every ounce of my energy on running Ethelred. His favorite joke, the one he always made as he kissed me goodbye before a long international trip, rang in my ears. "You build the empire, Eliza," he would say. "You just let me protect our fortress." A new sound from upstairs shattered the memory. It was not Marcus. It was a giggle, a high-pitched, breathless, female giggle. It was a sound that was young and sickeningly familiar. I knew that laugh. It was Chloe, his intern, a student, barely 20 years old, from the University of Washington's business program. I had personally interviewed her, fast-tracking her application. I had been impressed by her drive, her supposed intelligence. Marcus had been so grateful. "She's a huge help, Eliza, a real go-getter," he had said just last week. I had thought his mentorship was admirable. The giggling subsided, and then Marcus spoke again. His voice was no longer teasing. It was cold, clinical, and triumphant. "That's right, baby. That medical power of attorney is better than a will. We can liquidate everything before she inherits." The last warmth of my memories evaporated. The man I loved was not just a stranger. He was an executioner, and the fortress he was protecting was never ours. It was his. My foot, which had been poised for the first step, lowered back to the polished concrete. I did not gasp. I did not scream. The shock was so profound, so absolute. It bypassed emotion entirely and went straight to analysis. There was no pain, just a sudden hollow certainty. I was a target. My father was a target. I backed away. One step, then another. My stockinged feet made no sound on the oak floor. I did not look up again. I kept my eyes on the path back to the garage, moving with a predator's silence. The woman who had rushed in, frantic about a missed flight, was gone. In her place was something cold and sharp. I slipped my wet shoes back on, not bothering to wipe my feet. I slid back into the driver's seat of the Tesla. The garage door was still open. I pressed the button to close it, waiting in the silence as it descended, sealing the house and the monsters inside. Then I put the car in reverse, backed out onto the rain-lashed street, and drove away. I drove for miles, my route automatic, my mind a blank, white screen. The rain hammered the roof, a desperate percussion. I did not cry. Tears were a luxury, a biological response I could not afford. My heart, the one that had swelled with love for Marcus, felt like it had been flash-frozen, a solid, heavy block of ice in my chest. There was no grief. Grief is for loss. This was not loss. This was infiltration. This was an attack. My CEO mind, the part of me trained to identify threats, assess risk, and execute strategy, clicked online. The fog of emotion evaporated, replaced by a terrifying crystalline clarity. This was not a domestic tragedy. This was a hostile takeover. I saw their plan laid out like a quarterly projection. My trip to Singapore, the 5 days I was scheduled to be dark on a plane and in high-level meetings. That was their window. It was the kill window. She will be in the air for 14 hours. Pull the plug on the old man by Friday. Their timeline was precise. By the time I landed, my father would be dead, a legal, authorized termination of care, signed off by the man I trusted, and with me, his sole heir, trapped on the other side of the world. Marcus would have free reign. We can liquidate everything before she inherits. He would activate his control over our joint assets, drain our accounts, and disappear with his 20-year-old partner. By the time I returned, I would be burying my father and standing in the shell of my life. I kept driving south on the I-5, away from my life, away from Seattle. I was on autopilot, destination unknown, until a new thought, colder and darker than all the others, emerged. My father's stroke. It had been so sudden. He was healthy, vital, and Marcus was the one who found him. I saw it now, a memory replaying in sharp, horrific detail, Marcus bringing Dad his nightly glass of whiskey. Dad's favorite ritual. Marcus always prepared it. "Let me get that for you, Robert," he would say, his voice so full of false deference. He had found him slumped in his study, the empty glass on the table beside him. A mysterious stroke. My stomach tightened. It was not natural. It was poison. That bastard had not just seized an opportunity. He had created it. He had tried to murder my father 6 months ago, and now he was going back to finish the job. I finally exited in Tacoma, a gritty industrial city far from the manicured lawns of Lake Washington. I found a generic motel, the kind with flickering neon and peeling paint, set back from the highway. I paid for 2 nights, in cash. The room smelled of bleach and stale cigarettes. It was perfect. It was an airlock, a place where Eliza, the wife, could die. I locked the deadbolt in the chain. I stood in the dim light, looking at my reflection in the cracked mirror over the dresser. My phone, my beautiful, encrypted, top-of-the-line smartphone, buzzed on the counter. My lifeline, my connection to Ben, to my company. It was also a tracking device. It was a link to Marcus. I stared at it, this rectangle of glass and metal that held my entire life. Then I turned it off, powered it down for the last time. I walked out of the motel, down the street to a convenience store, and bought a $50 prepaid burner phone. I paid in cash. On the walk back, I passed a storm drain. I looked at my personal phone one last time, then dropped it into the darkness. It landed with a soft splash. The woman who drove to the airport was dead. The woman who stood in that cheap motel room, clutching a burner phone, was someone new. She was a warrior, and she was ready to go to war. I stood in the center of the foul-smelling room, the cheap plastic of the burner phone feeling heavy and foreign in my hand. My list of assets was no longer financial, it was human. There were only 2 people on earth I trusted with my life. I dialed the first number from memory. It rang twice. Ben, he answered. No, hello, just his name. Always professional, always ready. Ben, it's Eliza. Ma'am, you should be wheels up. Is there a problem with the connection? Code red, Ben. The line was silent for exactly 1 second, a beat of absolute stillness. Code red was our break glass protocol, a failsafe we had designed for a catastrophic corporate espionage threat. Not for this. Understood. His voice dropped, all professional warmth gone, replaced by the flat, cold calm of the soldier he used to be. Go secure. I am secure, I said, my voice low. But I am not in Singapore. I never left. I am in the United States, location undisclosed. What are your orders? He asked. No questions, no surprise, just execution. I need a ghost. I need a complete digital wallet for my time in Singapore. I need you to create an entire presence. Schedule social media posts about the summit. Reply to non-essential emails with a plausible delay. I need Marcus, and everyone else at Ethelred, to believe I am sitting in that conference hall. Consider it done, he said. What about communication? Reroute all essential contact, anything needing my eyes, through a new encrypted channel. I'll text you the credentials from this device. This burner is my only line. You contact me. I do not contact you. And Ben. Ma'am. No one. Absolutely no one knows I am here. My life depends on it. Solid copy. Ma'am. I'll build the firewall. Your ghost will be live in 30 minutes. He hung up. 1 asset secured. I dialed the second number. It rang 4 times, and I almost hung up before she answered, her voice cheerful and loud. Sarah's accounting, where every bean is counted. Sarah, it's me. The cheerful tone vanished, replaced by the sharp, analytical voice of my oldest friend. Liza, what's wrong? You sound terrible. I need you, I said, cutting her off. I need the shark, not the friend. There was a pause. Where? The 3 Sparrows Diner, Tacoma, off the I-5, 1 hour. I hung up before she could reply. The 3 Sparrows was a 24-hour joint that smelled of old grease and regret. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on the cracked vinyl booths. Sarah was already there when I walked in, her trench coat dripping onto the seat, a heavy-duty laptop already open on the table next to a cup of black coffee. At 39, she still looked like the college rebel who'd chain-smoked her way through finals, but her eyes were the sharpest I had ever known. She was not just an accountant. She was a hunter, a forensic specialist who found the bodies the elite buried in their balance sheets. I slid into the booth, the vinyl cold against my legs. I did not waste time. My husband, Marcus, is trying to murder my father. He's planning to pull the plug on Friday while I'm in Singapore, and he's liquidating my assets with his intern. Chloe. Sarah's face went blank. She did not gasp. She did not offer sympathy. She just nodded, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Okay. What do you need? I need you to dig into my husband. I need to know everything. I need to know where every dollar he's ever touched has gone. I need you to dig. Sarah, dig like he's an enemy of the state. I want to know his blood type and his mother's maiden name by sunrise. He's that good, she asked, her voice low. He's better, I said, my voice hollow. He fooled me. That was all she needed. Give me your logins, she said. All of them, joint accounts, personal, offshore, everything. For the next hour, the only sounds in the booth were the clatter of plates from the distant kitchen and the rapid, rhythmic tapping of Sarah's keys. She moved through firewalls and encrypted portals like they were made of paper. Use my laptop, she said, gesturing to the machine. Access your accounts through my VPN. I do not want you leaving a digital footprint. I logged into our joint accounts. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I was looking for the exit strategy, the big transfers, but there was nothing, not yet, just small things. Sarah, I'm seeing regular transfers, small amounts, a few $1,000s every few weeks, going to a shell company, Cascade Peak Investments. It has been happening for over a year. Diversion, she muttered, not looking up from her own screen. Building a nest egg slowly so the algorithm does not flag it. He is patient. He has been planning this for a long time, I whispered, the cold in my chest intensifying. Longer than you think, Sarah said. Her typing stopped. I looked up. She was staring at her screen, her face pale under the yellow lights. What is it? I am running his social security number against the federal databases. It's clean, too clean. It is perfect. What does that mean? It means it is brand new, relatively speaking. She turned the laptop screen toward me. It showed a data file. Eliza? Your husband, Marcus, did not exist before 8 years ago. The diner seemed to tilt. What are you talking about? His family is from Boston. He has no family from Boston. He has no family anywhere. The man you married, Marcus, is a fabrication, a ghost. Who is he? I demanded, my voice a harsh whisper. Sarah's fingers flew across the keys again, running facial recognition against known databases, cross-referencing criminal and financial fraud watch lists. He is good, she murmured. He is very good. He is deep level. But he slipped. A photograph popped up. It was him, younger, thinner, with a different haircut, standing outside a New York courthouse. The name beneath it was not Marcus. His name is Julian Vance, Sarah said, her voice grim. He is a professional con artist from the East Coast, and from the looks of it, Eliza, you are not his first wife. Julian Vance. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. The man in the photograph was Marcus, but his eyes were colder, emptier. The man I had married was a character, a role he played, and I had been his most willing audience. He's a predator, Sarah said, her voice dropping, all traces of the diner's ambient noise fading away. She was in the zone now, her fingers flying, pulling threads on a tapestry I had never known existed. He has a pattern. He targets wealthy women, always when they're at their most vulnerable. A death in the family. A messy divorce. My father's stroke, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. You were the perfect target, she said, not looking at me, her eyes glued to the screen. Grieving daughter, suddenly overwhelmed with running a billion-dollar company. You were distracted, isolated, and sitting on a fortune. You were not just a mark, Eliza. You were his masterpiece. My mind reeled, trying to place this new reality over the memories of the man who cried at our wedding. It would not fit. "I'm finding a trail of civil suits," Sarah continued, her voice a grim monotone. "New York, 5 years ago. Florida, 2 years after that. All filed by women. All alleging the same thing: financial malfeasance, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty." "What happened to them?" I asked, dreading the answer. "They all went away," she said, clicking through sealed court dockets. "Every single one was either mysteriously dismissed or settled out of court for pennies on the dollar, the records permanently sealed. He did not just pay them off. He buried them in legal fees until they broke, or he scared them into silence." "And Chloe?" I asked, the image of her youthful, innocent face flashing in my mind. "The intern. Running her now." Sarah opened a new window. "Chloe, whatever last name he gave you, does not exist. There is no student by that name enrolled at the University of Washington. The resume you saw, the transcripts, they're all fakes." "But I interviewed her," I protested, my mind scrambling. She was whatever he needed her to be," Sarah said. She ran the intern's headshot through a facial recognition database. It took less than 10 seconds. A new profile appeared, linked to a dozen different aliases. "Her real name is likely Samantha Deckel, or maybe Laura Klein. She is not 20 years old. Eliza. Her oldest records put her at 28. She's his long-term partner." The breath left my body, the giggling, the intimate tone, the mentorship I had encouraged. She was the setup, I realized. She was the one who got him into my life. She probably identified you as the target months before you ever met him. Sarah agreed. She inserts herself, finds the vulnerabilities, and then he makes his entrance. They're a team. A cold, sick dread settled deep in my stomach, a premonition that was darker than fraud. "Sarah," I said, my voice shaking for the first time, "if he's done this before, if he's this good at making things disappear, did all of those women survive?" Sarah stopped typing. She looked at me, her sharp eyes softening for just a moment with a terrible understanding. She knew what I was asking. She turned back to her laptop and typed in a new set of search parameters. Julian Vance, deceased associates, Connecticut. The only sound was the buzz of the diner's faulty fluorescent light. "Oh, God," Sarah breathed. "What?" I demanded, my voice harsh. "What did you find?" She turned the laptop screen so I could see it. It was a scanned police report from a small town in Connecticut, dated 5 years ago. An attached local news clipping told the story in 3 brief paragraphs. "Dr. Evelyn Reed," I read aloud, "was found dead in her home from an apparent accidental overdose of prescription medication. Her death has been ruled a suicide, likely brought on by the stress of a recent financial audit." "Evelyn Reed," Sarah said, her voice a bare whisper, "was Julian Vance's wife, his last wife, right before he moved to New York." I stared at the words. "She found out," I whispered. "She found the theft. She started an audit, and he killed her," Sarah finished, her voice turning to steel. "He murdered her, staged it as a suicide, and then used her death to quash the financial investigation." The room tilted. The smell of old coffee and grease was suddenly unbearable. He had not just tried to poison my father. He had done it before. He was a killer. The man I had given my life to, the man I had given my father's life to, was a sociopath who had murdered at least one other woman who stood in his way. This changed everything. The blood drained from my face, but the fear was instantly replaced by a rage so cold and pure it burned. This was not about money. This was not about my company. This was about my father lying helpless in that hospital bed. It was about Evelyn Reed, a woman I had never known, whose name had been buried along with her body. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the linoleum. I threw a handful of cash onto the table. We are leaving. Now. Where are we going? Sarah asked, already closing her laptop. Your office, I said. This place is too exposed. We need a war room. We need whiteboards, secure lines, and we need to move fast. He's not just a con man, Sarah. He's a murderer, and his timeline is Friday. We walked out of the diner and into the relentless gray morning. The woman who had been shattered by a betrayal was gone. In her place was an executioner. The war room, as Sarah had begun calling it, was her cramped back office, now covered in whiteboards. We had timelines, aliases, and a spiderweb of offshore bank accounts. But my focus was singular. The clock on the wall was ticking. It was Monday afternoon. He planned to kill my father by Friday. That was less than 4 days. I have to go to him, I said, my voice flat. Eliza. No, Sarah said, not looking up from her screen. The facility is the first place he'll look if he gets spooked. It is compromised. He will not see me, I said, but I cannot let my father lie there, a target in a bed, while his executioner has the keys. I left Sarah digging and drove to a strip mall in Bellevue. I went into a wig shop and bought a cheap, mousy brown wig that hung limp to my shoulders. I stopped at a thrift store and bought a pair of baggy gray sweatpants, an oversized, faded University of Washington sweatshirt, and a pair of worn-out running shoes. I changed in the store's filthy bathroom. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. She was exhausted, invisible, and broken. She was perfect. I took a rideshare to the residential neighborhood near the Fairlawn Care Facility, the best in the state. Marcus had insisted and got out 3 blocks away. I walked the rest of the way in the rain, my head down, my hands jammed in my pockets. I slipped in through a side entrance used by the kitchen staff, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew the layout by heart, every sterile turn, every quiet nurse's station. I moved toward my father's wing. I stopped at the doorway of his room, hiding in the alcove across the hall. I could see him through the small glass window. Robert. My father. He was so pale, his strong patrician features rendered slack and weak by the stroke. The machines around him beeped and hissed in a steady, cold rhythm. 6 months ago. Those sounds were a comfort, a sign that he was still with me. Now, they sounded like a countdown clock. I did not go in. I went to the main desk for that wing. Nurse Brenda Jacobs was on duty. She was the head nurse, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a steady hand, a woman I had trusted, cried with, and relied on. Eliza, she said, her voice full of surprise. Mrs. Vance. My goodness, I thought you were traveling. Is everything all right? Flight was canceled. I lied, my voice a low, urgent whisper. Brenda, I need to ask you something. It is confidential, and it is critically important. Her professional demeanor clicked in. She nodded. Of course. What is it? My husband, Marcus. Just saying his name felt like swallowing glass. He visits my father often, correct? Oh, every day, she said, her expression softening. He is the most devoted man. Sits with him for hours. We all say your father is a lucky man to have such a son-in-law. The praise was a physical blow. When he is here, I pushed, keeping my voice level. Is he ever alone with my father, without a nurse present? Brenda's smile faltered. She hesitated. Well, yes. He often requests privacy. He says he just wants to read to him quietly without us fussing. He seems to know so much. She stopped. What? I demanded. It is nothing, she said, looking uncomfortable. He has just been so helpful. A few times he's mentioned the drip rate on the IV seemed slow, and he just adjusted it himself. He said he was just making sure your father was comfortable, just helping us out. Helping. The word hung in the air, venomous and sharp. He was not helping. He was administering the poison himself, bit by bit. My mind raced. I needed proof. I needed the blood. I grabbed her arm, my grip tighter than I intended. "Brenda, listen to me," I said, my voice commanding. "I just received an urgent call from my geneticist. I had a full panel done last month. They found something. A rare familial disorder. It's a pseudocholinesterase deficiency. It means my father's side of the family. My side. We can have a fatal reaction to certain painkillers and muscle relaxants. It can mimic a stroke. It can be fatal." The medical jargon worked. Her eyes widened in alarm. "We have to test him. Now," I said. "I need a full blood draw, a clean sample, but it cannot go to the hospital lab. They will not know what to look for. It has to go to a private toxicology lab." "Eliza, I cannot just—" "Yes, you can," I said, cutting her off. I pulled the worn copy of my father's medical directive from my bag. I am his secondary power of attorney, and as of this moment, I am invoking my authority. I am revoking Marcus Vance's primary status. "Revoking?" she gasped. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds of an ongoing financial dispute." I lied, the excuse tasting flimsy but sounding official. "It is a temporary legal precaution, but effective immediately. He is to have no access to my father's medical care. He is not to be consulted. He is not to be allowed in this room. Am I clear?" The color drained from her face. She looked from the legal document to my hard, cold eyes. She nodded. "Yes, I understand." "Good," I said. "Now get the blood. Use this kit." Shoo, I pushed a prepaid overnight toxicology kit across the counter that Sarah had sourced. "Do not log it in the hospital system. Give the sealed sample directly to me." While she was in the room, her back to the door, drawing my father's blood, I made one last call on the burner. I dialed a private security firm, a competitor to the one Ethelred had on retainer. "I need a 2-man team," I said to the dispatcher, my voice like ice. "Armed, 24/7, starting in 30 minutes. Fairlawn Care Facility, room 312. No one enters that room who is not on the approved nursing staff list. No visitors, no family. And I want a standing order a man named Marcus Vance is to be considered a direct threat. He is not to come within 50 feet of that door." Brenda came out and handed me the sealed, temperature-controlled bag. The blood was still warm. It was all the proof I needed. I slipped it into my backpack and walked out the way I came, a ghost disappearing back into the rain. I had the evidence. Now, I just had to stop a murder. Adebayo Whale was Ethelred Analytics' chief counsel. He was a man who had negotiated hostile takeovers in Tokyo and preempted regulatory shutdowns in Brussels. He was, to my knowledge, unflappable. He arrived at Sarah's office at 3 a.m. on Tuesday morning, his suit immaculate, his expression irritated at the summons. "Eliza," he said, forgoing a greeting. "You are supposed to be in Singapore. What is this, Sarah? Why are we in your office?" Sarah and I had cleared the whiteboards. I stood in the center of the room. "Adebayo," I said, my voice flat. "I appreciate your discretion. What I am about to tell you is covered by attorney-client privilege in its entirety. You will not bill this to Ethelred. You will bill this to me personally." His irritation faded, replaced by sharp focus. "My husband, Marcus, is not Marcus. His name is Julian Vance. He is a professional con artist who has murdered at least one of his previous wives. 6 months ago, he attempted to murder my father. He is planning to finish the job this Friday, using the medical power of attorney I gave him. He is currently in the process of a hostile takeover, not just of my personal assets, but of Ethelred Analytics itself. This is not a domestic dispute. This is corporate warfare." Adebayo, for the first time in the decade I had known him, looked utterly, profoundly shocked. His mouth opened slightly. He stared at me, then at Sarah, who was already back at her keyboard. He did not speak for a full 10 seconds. Then, he loosened his tie, took off his jacket, and rolled up his white sleeves. "Right," he said, his voice dropping into a low, tactical growl. Show me everything. For the next hour, we laid it all out. The aliases, the timeline, the shell company, Cascade Peak Investments, the dead wife, Evelyn Reed. Adebayo's shock solidified into a cold, focused fury. He was my corporate lawyer. An attack on me, and on my company, was an attack on him. "Give me access," he said. He pulled a slim, hardened laptop from his briefcase and connected to Sarah's secure network. "I am going into the Ethelred mainframe. If he's been inside, he left footprints." We were silent for 20 minutes as he worked, his fingers a blur. "He is good," Adebayo muttered, his eyes scanning code. "But he is arrogant." "What do you see?" I asked, pacing behind him. "He used a forged electronic signature," Adebayo said, disgust coloring his voice. 3 weeks ago, he tried to appoint himself to the Ethelred Board of Directors as a provisional member. The motion was automatically flagged and rejected by the system for procedural errors, but he buried the notification. He was counting on you being gone for 5 days to manually override it. "That is my company," I seethed. "It gets worse," Adebayo said, his face grim. "He filed preliminary paperwork with our creditors, Eliza. He was attempting to leverage the intellectual property, the core Ethelred algorithm. He was trying to post our IP as collateral for a loan from Cascade Peak Investments. He was not just stealing from you, he was trying to mortgage your entire company to his own empty shell corporation." He did not wait for my response. He was already dialing, his personal phone in one hand, typing with the other. For the rest of the night, Adebayo was a whirlwind of legal action. He worked the phones, calling in favors from judges he knew, waking them up in the middle of the night. He dictated emergency injunctions, filed temporary restraining orders, and drafted ex parte motions. He was systematically and surgically cutting Julian Vance off. By sunrise, Adebayo had successfully filed motions to freeze every joint account I held with Marcus, every asset tied to his name, and every account associated with Cascade Peak Investments. The fortress walls were going back up. "Now," Adebayo said, rubbing his exhausted eyes as the gray Seattle light filtered into the office. "He is blind, and he is broke, but he does not know it yet. He thinks his plan is working. He is expecting to hear from me," I said. "He thinks I am in Singapore." Ben, my assistant, had set it all up. The ghost in the machine. He confirmed the encrypted line was ready. I picked up the burner phone. My hands were perfectly steady. This was my boardroom. This was my performance. I dialed. It rang 3 times. He answered. "Eliza Love." I was worried. Is everything okay? His voice was a perfect symphony of warm concern. I let a shaky, exhausted sigh come over the line. "Hi, darling," I said, my voice pitched to sound weary from travel. "I just landed. I am so tired, but the conference, it is amazing. God, I miss you." I watched Sarah and Adebayo listen, their faces hard. "I miss you too, my love," Julian cooed, the lie sliding effortlessly from his tongue. "You just focus on your summit. I am holding down the fort. Everything is perfectly safe here." Perfectly safe. As he said it, Sarah, who was monitoring the now frozen bank accounts in real time, looked up at me, her eyes wide. She scribbled frantically on the whiteboard next to her. She held it up. It read, "He is at the bank, right now, trying to transfer $5 million. My blood turned to ice, but my voice remained warm, airy. "Oh, darling, my speech," I said, launching into the first thing that came to my mind. "I think it went well, but I was so nervous. I focused on the new data metrics for the 3rd quarter projections. You know, the ones we discussed." Adebayo understood immediately. He grabbed his own phone and dialed, his voice a low, urgent command. "This is Adebayo Whale, General Counsel for Ethelred Analytics. I am speaking to—" "Yes. Get me your head of legal. Now. There is a fraudulent wire transfer in progress. Account holder Eliza Vance. The man at your desk is Julian Vance. Stop the transaction. I am emailing you the emergency court order right now. And the algorithm's predictive accuracy was over 98%, I prattled on, watching Adebayo's silent, frantic gestures. On the other end of the line, I heard Julian's voice, muffled, speaking to someone else. What? What do you mean? A compliance hold. It is my wife's account. Just run the transfer. A beat of silence. Then his voice was back in my ear, strained, the warmth gone, replaced by a brittle edge. Eliza, love, listen. Something has just come up here. A problem with the bank. I have to call you back. Oh, I said, injecting the perfect amount of wifely concern. Is everything all right? Fine, he snapped, his mask slipping for the first time. It is just… Fine, I will handle it. Talk soon. He hung up. I lowered the phone. Adebayo was still on his call, but he looked at me and gave a single, sharp nod. It is denied, Adebayo said, closing his phone. The account is frozen. All of them. He is trapped. He has no money, and he knows something is wrong. The war room was silent, but my digital world was exploding. Julian or Marcus. I had to keep reminding myself of the mask he wore was in a full-blown panic. We could see the electronic traces. He was calling the bank, frantic, yelling at compliance officers. He was trying to access our joint brokerage account, only to find it locked. He was texting my Singapore phone, Ben's phone, a stream of increasingly desperate, angry messages. Bank is messing everything up. Call me. Emergency. Eliza, where are you? Ben, my digital ghost, replied calmly every 2 hours. In strategy sessions, phone off. Is it urgent? The replies we got back were pure, incoherent rage. He was trapped, and he knew it, but he still thought I was the one on the other side of the planet. He had no idea the cage was his, and I was the one watching him pace. He is desperate, Adebayo said, sipping his 4th cup of coffee. A desperate man is dangerous. He is going to accelerate his timeline. He already tried, I said, my voice empty. My security team at the hospital called. A man matching Marcus's description tried to get access to my father's wing. Said there was a family emergency. What happened? Sarah asked. The guards stopped him. He could not provide the new security password. He threatened to sue them. They threatened to call the police. He fled. So he is blocked from the money and blocked from the hospital. Adebayo summarized. He is cornered. It is not enough, I said. Blocking him is defense. I want to destroy him. Then we need more than fraud, Sarah said, her eyes fixed on her screen. She had not slept in what looked like 48 hours. The dead wives are a pattern, but the evidence is circumstantial. Evelyn Reed's case is closed, ruled a suicide. It is your word against his. We need a living witness. Adebayo agreed. I think, Sarah said, her voice quiet. I just found one. She spun her laptop around. On the screen was a social media profile for an Isabel Monet, a high-profile art dealer in Miami. The photos showed a vibrant, beautiful woman in her 40s, surrounded by expensive art and influential people. I traced the civil suit from Florida, Sarah explained. The one that was mysteriously dropped. It was filed by her. Julian Vance, he used a different alias then. Richard Cole seems to have infiltrated her gallery. When I cross-referenced the names, I found this. She lost her gallery, filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago, and fell off the map, but she is not dead. I picked up my burner phone. Give me her number. I found her working at a small contemporary gallery in Coral Gables, a fraction of the size of her former empire. I dialed. A woman answered, her voice tired and professional. Isabel Monet speaking. My name is Eliza Vance, I said. I am calling from Seattle. I need to speak to you about a man you knew as Richard Cole, a man I know as Marcus Vance. The line went completely dead. I could hear nothing but faint static, then the sound of a sharp, terrified inhalation. Who is this? Who are you? I do not know what you are talking about. Leave me alone. She was about to hang up. He did it to me, too, I said, my voice fast and hard. He married me. He tried to murder my father 6 months ago. He is planning to finish the job this week. He is not just a thief. Isabel. He is a killer. He murdered his last wife. Dr. Evelyn Reed, in Connecticut. The name was a key. I heard a sound on the other end, a choked, desperate sob that sounded like it had been held in for years. Evelyn, she whispered, the name breaking her. I knew I always thought. He told me you were unstable, I said, the lie coming easily. He told me he had to leave you because you were reckless, that you destroyed your own business. He framed me, she cried, the words tearing out of her. He stole $2 million. He did it through a series of wire transfers that looked like I was avoiding taxes. He did not just rob me, Eliza. He made me look like the criminal I was investigated by the IRS. I almost went to prison. He destroyed my life, my name, everything. Her story was mine, just with a different ending. He had refined his methods. With me, he was going for the entire kingdom. He is here, Isabel, I said, my voice like ice. He is in my house. I have him trapped. I have his money frozen. But I need your testimony. I need you to stand with me and put him away forever. I cannot, she whispered. I am afraid. He killed Evelyn, I repeated. He is trying to kill my father. He will find another woman after me, and he will kill again. He will not stop until he is stopped. Fly to Seattle. Tonight, I will pay for everything. We will end him together. There was a long pause, filled only with her ragged breathing. Yes, she said, her voice no longer crying, but filled with a sudden, sharp hatred. Yes, I will be on the next flight. I hung up. One more soldier in the army. I looked at the whiteboard, at the web of lies, and a thought that had been bothering me surfaced. Sarah, I said. How did he find me? The gala. It seemed so random, but he knew exactly what to say. He knew I was vulnerable. I have been thinking about that, Sarah said. She pointed to the picture of Chloe, the 28-year-old partner, posing as a 20-year-old intern. She was the key. She had to be... My burner phone rang. It was an unknown number, a private lab in Oregon. I snatched it up. This is Eliza Vance. Mrs. Vance, a clinical male voice said, we have the results of the toxicology panel you requested for Robert. It was a complex screen, but we found it. My hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. What? Traces of succinylcholine. It is a neuromuscular blocking agent, a paralytic, in small, repeated doses. It would be almost impossible to detect in a standard hospital blood test. It would perfectly mimic the symptoms of a massive, debilitating stroke. I closed my eyes. The proof. Attempted murder. I hung up the phone. He poisoned him, I said to the room. My voice was a monotone. The lab confirmed it. He has been poisoning my father. Sarah looked up from her screen, her face white. Eliza, you were right. It was Chloe. I just broke the encryption on a deleted cloud drive registered to one of her aliases. She pulled up a file. It was a series of text messages, dated 8 months ago, 2 full months before I ever met Marcus at the charity gala. The messages were between Chloe and Julian. The first one from Chloe read, Found the new target. Eliza Vance, Ethelred CEO. Father is the founder. Health is good, but she is the one. This is the whale. Julian. The score of a lifetime. A reply from Julian. How is the access? And then the last message, from Chloe. The Ethelred Gala is in 8 weeks. I am already in. I got a volunteer pass. I will be inside. I will find her. I will get her information. And I will set the stage. You just be ready to meet her. I stared at the words. She had not just stumbled into my life with him. She was not just a partner. She is a recruiter, I whispered, the cold clarity of it all settling over me. She was the scout. She targeted me. She found me. She vetted me, and she fed me to him. Julian was too smart. He was a professional, a ghost who had spent a decade perfecting the art of disappearing. He had sensed the trap the moment the bank transfer failed. He was now a cornered animal, and that made him unpredictable and infinitely more dangerous. I could not go after him directly. He would be expecting me, the grieving, angry wife. But he had a weakness, a 28-year-old woman pretending to be 20, a partner who was, at her core, just a greedy, second-rate con artist. Chloe. Julian was the mastermind, but Chloe was the operative. She was the one on the ground, the one who had scouted me, the one who had giggled in my house. She was the weak link. I had to break her first. Julian was in the wind, likely hiding, his digital trail gone dark, but Chloe was still playing her part. She was still the innocent intern. Sarah tracked her in less than an hour. She was not at the university. She was not at the office. She was exactly where a panicked girl trying to look calm would be an upscale outdoor mall in Bellevue, sitting at a cafe, nursing a latte and pretending to read a book. I did not change out of my combat gear of sweats and a hoodie. I walked into the pristine, sunlit cafe, a specter of rage in a world of casual wealth. She was sitting at a small marble table, her back to the window, her foot tapping a nervous rhythm against the leg of her chair. She looked up as I approached, her face a mask of polite confusion, ready to dismiss a stranger. Then she saw me. Her eyes widened, the blood draining from her face. She opened her mouth, no doubt to spin a lie about my canceled trip. I did not give her the chance. I sat down opposite her, my voice low and cold. Do you really think he is splitting $50 million with you? The question hit her like a physical slap. Eliza. What? What are you doing here? I thought you were in Singapore. What 50 million? She was a terrible actress without Julian writing her script. Her voice was too high, her hands visibly trembling as she clutched her coffee cup. Do not, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the cafe's polite chatter. Do not play the intern with me. I was in the house. I heard you. I heard you both. Her composure shattered. Pure animal panic flashed in her eyes. I do not know what you are talking about. Marcus and I were we were working. His name, I said, is Julian Vance. I let the name hang in the air. Her face went from white to a sickly shade of gray. You are an accomplice to attempted murder. You are a recruiter for a serial killer. No, she gasped, half rising from her chair. You are crazy. He is not. It was not. I slammed the file down on the table. It was not a thick file, but it was heavy. Sit down. She flinched and fell back into her seat. Her eyes were glued to the manila folder. I opened it. I did not show her everything. I just showed her the highlights. I slid the first paper across the table. Dr. Evelyn Reed, Connecticut, 5 years ago. Ruled a suicide, but the autopsy notes unexplained bruising on the neck. She was Julian's wife. She found out he was stealing. Sound familiar? Chloe stared at the police report, her mouth opening and closing silently. I slid the second paper over, landing it on top of the first. My father, Robert, toxicology report from a private lab. It confirms he is being systematically poisoned with succinylcholine, a paralytic, the kind that mimics a stroke. Her eyes darted from the paper to my face, searching for an exit. There was none. And this, I said, is the one that should really concern you. I pulled out the last document. It was a fake, a brilliant piece of forgery Sarah and Adebayo had created overnight. It was a bank statement from a Cayman Islands trust. It showed a single massive transfer of $5 million, an amount that matched what he had tried to move from my account, but the transfer was not going in. It was going out. I do not understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. Of course you do not. You see, Julian has a joint operating account with you. Does he not? Cascade Peak Investments? That is where he was pooling the money he siphoned from me. I tapped the faked document. This is his real account, his personal exit plan. This transfer is from yesterday. He is draining your joint account, Chloe. He is taking every dollar you two stole, and he is moving it to an account that has only his name on it. It was a lie, a beautiful, perfect, and completely plausible lie. He is betraying you, I said, leaning in. He is panicking. He is going to run, and he is going to leave you behind to hold the bag. He is going to leave you with the money gone. My father's attempted murder on your hands, and Evelyn Reed's cold case suddenly reopened. No, she said, shaking her head, the denial weak, desperate. He would not. He loves me. We are partners. You are a 20-year-old intern, I sneered, throwing her fake persona back in her face. He is a 42-year-old serial killer. When the police catch up, who do you think takes the fall, the mastermind who has been a ghost for a decade, or his visible, documented, and very traceable accomplice? She was breaking. The tears were welling, her entire body shaking. She was trapped, and she knew it. I am offering you a choice, I said, my voice suddenly reasonable, almost kind. Just one. You have one path out of this. You help me catch him. You help me put him in a cage for the rest of his life. And if I do, she whispered, the tears now streaming down her cheeks, mascara running. If you do, I go to the district attorney with Adebayo Whale. I tell them you were a coerced victim, that you were a young, terrified woman who was manipulated and threatened by a sociopath. I tell them you were the one who came to me, horrified, and offered to help. I will make sure they see you as a victim, not a co-conspirator. You get immunity. You walk away. And if you do not, I said, my voice hardening, I will hand this entire file to the police, and I will dedicate every dollar I have and every ounce of my energy to ensuring you spend the rest of your life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. Julian will be gone. You will be the one they find. She stared at me, her mind racing, calculating the odds. She had been conned by him, and now she was being cornered by me. She was out of moves. She finally collapsed, her face crumpling. Okay, she sobbed, her voice muffled. Okay, I will do it. What? What do you want me to do? I reached into my bag and pulled out a small digital audio recorder, so tiny it looked like a button. You are going to call him, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. You are going to tell him you have a plan to get the money, and you are going to wear this. It was Monday night. The city was dark, the rain finally reduced to a cold, persistent drizzle. We were parked in an unmarked surveillance van 1 block away from my glass house. The vehicle was a high-tech mobile command center, courtesy of Adebayo's connections with the Seattle PD's Financial Crimes Unit. The air inside crackled with a low, electric tension. It was me, Sarah, and Isabel Monet, who had flown in from Miami only 6 hours before. Her face was pale, but her eyes were twin flames of righteous hatred. A lead detective and a tech specialist monitored the feeds. It was time. I picked up my burner phone and sent the text to Ben. Send the message, now. A second later, Julian's phone, which we were monitoring, lit up. The message was from Eliza. Flight canceled, horrible layover. Managed to get an earlier connection. Landing tonight. See you at home around 9. We watched his digital reaction. It was immediate panic. His phone instantly dialed Chloe. We heard his voice, thin and reedy, over the speaker patched in from the wire she was now wearing. Chloe, where are you? You have to get here. Now. To the house. She is coming back. Tonight. What? Chloe's voice was a perfect, shivering imitation of a terrified girl. Tonight, I thought we had until Friday. The plan is dead, he hissed. "The money is gone. The accounts are frozen. Someone knows. We have to clean up. We have to get the shredder, the hard drives. We have to go. Now." Okay, Julian, I am on my way," she said, and hung up. The detective looked at me, his expression grim. "She's in. We're green." We watched on a grainy night vision camera as Chloe's small sedan pulled into the long driveway. She got out, fumbling with her keys as she ran to the door. The audio from her wire crackled to life, filling the van with the ambient sound of my house. We heard the high-pitched whine of an industrial shredder, the sound of papers being frantically ripped. "Where have you been?" Julian's voice was sharp, paranoid, and ugly. "I got here as fast as I could," she cried. "Julian, what is happening?" "He is," Isabel Monet whispered next to me, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. "We have to go," Julian yelled. We heard a crash, a heavy thud, like a file cabinet being overturned. "Grab the laptops, all of them. Wipe them with the magnets. Everything. We have to be gone in 20 minutes. Then, Chloe delivered her line. Her voice was trembling, but she got the words out. "But Julian, what about the old man? What about your plan? The hospital? Pulling the plug?" The shredder stopped. There was a pause. "Forget the old man," Julian roared, and the admission was so clear, so perfect, it was like music. Someone blocked it. Some administrative error at the hospital. They put guards on his room. "We cannot get to him. My guards." "It does not matter," he continued, his voice frantic and unraveling. "The money is the problem. Someone locked us out. We will just have to take what we can and run. We will go to ground. We will find another way." "We got it," the lead detective muttered into his radio. "Full confession. Conspiracy to commit." We heard more frantic shuffling. Then, sudden, absolute silence. Just Julian's heavy, ragged breathing. "Julian," Chloe asked, her voice faltering. "Wait," he said. The paranoia in his voice had just become razor sharp. We heard a long, terrible pause. You are very calm. You are not panicked. You have been too calm this whole time." "What are you talking about? I am terrified." "No," he whispered. "You are not. You." We heard a scuffle. Chloe screamed. "What is this?" he roared. "What did you do?" He must have found the wire. The audio cut to a sharp burst of static. "He has her," Sarah gasped. "Go!" the detective yelled into his radio. "Go! Go! Go!" The van doors flew open, but before we could even move, the night exploded. High-intensity floodlights from 3 SWAT vans, hidden in the trees, illuminated the glass house, turning the entire structure into a brilliant, transparent stage. "Seattle PD, hands in the air, do not move." We saw their silhouettes through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Julian, frozen. One hand still clutching Chloe's jacket. Police officers in full tactical gear swarmed through the front door, which they had breached in less than a second. "Get on the ground now!" They tackled him, slamming him face first onto the polished concrete floor he thought he owned. Chloe was screaming, crying, being pulled to safety by another officer. It was over in 5 seconds. I stepped out of the van, the cold night air hitting my face. I walked past the flashing blue and red lights, up my own driveway. Adebayo was there, standing with the police captain. He saw me and simply nodded. The officers were cuffing Julian, hauling him to his feet. He was spitting, yelling, "You do not know who you are dealing with. I will sue all of you." Then he saw me. I was standing in the shadows of the grand entryway, just beyond the light. My arms were crossed. My face was perfectly, serenely calm. His entire body went slack. The rage evaporated, replaced by a comprehension so total, so devastating. It was beautiful to watch. He understood everything: the failed transfer, the locked accounts, The guards at the hospital. The text message. You, he whispered, his voice hoarse. You never went to Singapore. I walked out of the shadows, my footsteps echoing in the atrium. I stopped just before him. I looked at this creature, this parasite who had lived in my home and slept in my bed. I leaned in close, my voice low enough so only he could hear it. I forgot my passport. Now, enjoy your trip. Julian. Thank you all so much for listening to this story. I have to know your thoughts, so comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I love seeing where in the world you are. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.